Alrighty, everybody. To get us started, thank you so much for joining. This is our third in our economic outlook and policy webinar series. We're really excited. And you all will be muted throughout the presentation. And then at the end, we will have a short Q&A. Without further ado, I'll send it over to Brent to introduce today's speaker.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, Miles. I appreciate your help and everything with the webinar series here. It's my pleasure today to introduce to everybody Yao Wang, a new assistant professor in our department in Ag, Environment and Development Economics here at Ohio State University. Professor Wang's been with us for about a year now, I think. Isn't that right, Yao?
Sorry?
Have you've been with us for a year now?
Almost a year.
Yeah, almost a year. So this is great. Well, Professor Wang is a professor in our department. She has a PhD in economics from Syracuse University and a BA in economics from Zhongnang University in China. She studied a lot of different things, but her work really lies at the intersection of urban economics, development economics, and international trade. So we're excited to hear from her today about this really sort of critical and complex topic of sort of intersection between urban economics and climate change. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Yao. Thanks, Yao.
Thanks, Brent. Very nice introductions. As Brent just mentioned, this is the first year I joined AEDE at OSU, and this is also the first year I moved to Columbus. So I am really, really excited to introduce myself and as well as my research and extension interests with you guys. So let's get started. Again, welcome to this webinar, which I will talk about the carbon footprint of urban development. So this webinar is motivated by the phenomenon that we see our cities are growing rapidly, not only in terms of population, but also across space. Our cities are growing rapidly outwards. So we have a name for this kind of phenomenon, which is urban sprawl. The phenomenon has raised concerns among urban planners and also economists and many people from different areas that this rapid expansion of cities would put a lot of burdens on our environment and climate change. So for today's seminar, we will first talk about why our city is sprawling, the causes behind it, and how does this low density urban expansion would increase carbon emissions. And that's why we kind of have to concern about it. And in what ways can optimal urban planning and other policies can make our urban development more environmentally efficient? And lastly, we will talk about the challenges of designing and implementing such policies. So urban sprawl can in general be defined as the excessive expansion of urban development. It is usually associated with inefficient land use because within a certain amount of land, you can only build a little bit of housing or commercial floor space. And it is also associated with suburbanization as people move out of the downtown to suburbs. It creates this separation of firms and workers, and this would further create problems. So Columbus is definitely not an exception for urban sprawl. This is a map showing the city boundary back in 1970s on the left of Columbus. And on the right, we have what Columbus looks like in 2020. As we can see, Columbus is sprawling rapidly. So University of Utah and Smart Growth America has constructed a sprawl index that captures or measures the how connective and compact a city is using a sprawl index. So they rank different metro cities in the US in terms of this sprawl index. Columbus ranked 138 out of 221 cities. So Columbus is definitely not the most sprawling cities, but it definitely have a moderate amount of sprawling. So what are the reasons causes the sprawl? First of all, it could be organically happen because population is growing. Basically, more people, there would be more demand for land. And as people, and it could be because like income is growing. When people are earning more, they usually prefer larger houses. And this is not a one-for-one mapping between population growth and income to expansion of cities. Actually, a 1% increase in population growth or income growth will lead to more than 1% changes of land areas. Basically, people prefer to spread out as their income is growing. Another reason behind it is with the development of better transportation system, it is cheaper for people to commute, and it is easier for people to locate away from where they work. Although causes 1 to 3 seems like purely fundamental market forces, urban sprawl can be also an outcome of policies including land use regulations and the buildup of public investments. So let me give you some examples of such policies that would create more urban sprawl in the US context. First of all, US policy favors cars. Historically, the federal funding for transportation in the US would prioritize highways and roads over public transportations. So more investments encouraging on roads and highways encourages car-centric lifestyle for household in the US. And research has shown that this kind of imbalance prioritization on railroads would create more urban sprawl. Adding one more highway passing through the downtown would reduce the population located in downtown by about 20%. So basically, when a highway is built, people would move out of the downtown to suburb, and they can still commute every day to where they work. Besides that, US policy also favors car by offering the cheapest gas in the world. So this is a map showing the percentage of GDP per capita taken up to 100 gallons of gas. So basically you can think of this as the gas price adjusted for earnings. So according to this calculations, US actually have the cheapest gas in the world comparing to many developed countries in the world and developing countries. Besides that, US policies also favors larger homes. So the tax scheme in the US basically, in effect, provide a tax subsidies for home ownerships. Examples including offering tax exemptions for interest expenses on the first $750,000 of mortgage and the first $250,000 of income earning from home sales, and also the first 10Ks of property taxes. And also the government has sponsored multiple enterprises like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac to offer helps for households to get better access to mortgage. Therefore, they can buy houses or larger houses. Besides that, land use regulations exist almost in every cities in the US, and but the effects of land use regulations on urban sprawl is kind of ambiguous. So first off, on one hand, too few of land use regulations can cause sprawl. A good example is Houston, which is known for the lack of any zoning laws. However, it is also known for low density development patterns, extensive highways, and limited public transportation options. So without any restraints, the city just grows wildly and rapidly. However, it doesn't mean we should have like more land use regulations. Actually, from international evidence, we see that too many of land use regulations can also cause sprawl. So this is the picture showing the downtown in Mumbai, in India. So in the downtown of Mumbai, it has the government imposed a very stringent building height limit. Basically, the maximum floor area ratio is only 1.33 compared to an average of like about 7 for other cities in India. So floor area ratio basically is a constraint of how many floors developers can build within a certain amount of land areas. So the research shows that this kind of really stringent land use regulations would really put constraints on housing supplies of the central cities, then push the development outwards around the fringes of the cities, basically contributing to the urban sprawl in Mumbai. Okay, so now we have learned a little bit about the causes behind sprawl. So urban sprawl basically can happen organically by population growth and income growth, as well as the advancement of transportation technology. If that's all of the story, we probably don't need to care or concern too much about urban sprawl because it's just like it naturally happens. However, as we also talk about, urban sprawl can be caused or exacerbated by urban planning or policies. Besides that, more importantly, research has shown that urban sprawl have extra social costs. It would have cost on the society as a whole. This kind of social cost could be in different aspects. First of all, as people commute more, it would lead to more traffic congestions. And the second, as people move away from where they work, they're also moving away from their friends, from their neighbors, which would dissuade people to form friendships. And it is harder for them to engage in social activities. And the evidence also show that the car-centric lifestyle associated with urban sprawl would also increase the risk of public health, for example, for people to get obesity. And third, I guess many of the audience would probably feel the same. If you're working in urban planning, it is harder to provide urban infrastructures in less dense areas. It is very expensive to build highways. It's very expensive to build water pipes. If the urban infrastructures has to happen in a place that not much people would take up, would actually use it, it would not be beneficial if we only consider the costs and the benefits. And lastly, which is the focus of today's talk, is urban sprawl would generate more carbon emissions. Why? There are two major mechanisms. First of all, as cities spread out, people have to travel longer distance, not only to go to work, schools, but also go to grocery stores, go to gyms. All this would sum up. And to give you a sense of how large is the effects, as of 2017, transportation sector emits about 1.9 billion tons of carbon dioxide. Another mechanism is as people move from the downtown to suburb, they usually buy larger houses, and larger houses and buildings usually require more energy for heating, cooling, and lighting, which would further lead to higher carbon emissions from energy consumptions. And again, as of 2017, electric power sector emits about 1.8 billion tons of carbon dioxide. To get a better sense of how large is those two mechanisms in terms of people's commuting and residential energy use, in terms of the total carbon emission in the US, here is the breakdown of the total US greenhouse gas emission by economic sector in 2020. So the major, the biggest contributor is from the transportation sectors, which take up about 27% of the greenhouse gas emissions. And following that is electricity sectors, which include the electricity we use in our houses. Besides that, we also have 13% that is coming from commercial and residential like sectors. So basically this covers the carbon emission coming from the heating we use in our housing, the refrigerators we use in our daily life. So in total, as we can see, the two mechanisms I just mentioned actually contribute the major part of the carbon emission in the US. To give you a sense of, however, we haven't directly connect urban sprawl and carbon emissions. So next we will look at a figure that shows the carbon emission proxied by this gasoline use at different for different cities at different population levels. Basically cities with different sizes. So in the US, we do see cities are more densely populated, which means they are more compact and less sprawl, like New York City and San Francisco. So residents in those cities actually tend to produce lower carbon dioxide emissions from transport and residential energy use than cities that are more sprawling, like Houston. So next, let's talk about the different policies that could be used for in tackling this kind of environmental consequences of urban sprawl. So the most important policies or mostly widely used policies, including the followings. First, land use regulations and improving public transit, carbon tax, and promoting green buildings and cleaner energies. So in the next part of our webinar, I will talk about each policy's pros and cons of each policies in details. So the first set of policies is land use policies. The land use policy is a very wide set of policy instruments that we can use. So here I'm giving you a few most widely used policy, especially focused on curbing urban sprawl. So the first one is urban growth boundary. So what this policy do is basically set a plan that directly restrict the quantity of land a city can, developers can use within a certain amount of time. And this, a famous examples in the US is Oregon. Basically, every city in Oregon would have this UGB plan for every 20 years. So which set up the quantity of land that it can use to convert it to be used in urban use. And the second set of policies is building height limit. basically it set a limit of it would set a limit of building heights developers can build, just like the example I just mentioned in Mumbai, like the floor area ratio. So this kind of policies is motivated by a lot of research, basically showing that compact and highly dense urban development are usually more effective in mitigating environmental pollutions. So there's a lot of urban economists would advocate that to save the planet, build more skyscrapers. And the third set of widely used land use policy, including zonings. So zonings are helpful in terms of alleviating the social cost of urban sprawl. For example, if we designate the areas of where you can build highway or where factories are located away from residential areas, less residents would be affected by the noise or pollution that are generated by the factories and highways. However, the same set of zoning policies could have positive effects on urban sprawl, right? So you're further separating away from where people live and where people work. Land use policies conceptually or in theory can work because when population is large and when we restrict the land that can be used, the developers can only build high-rise buildings, and the housing unit would be smaller. And therefore, when the housing unit is smaller, the energy use per housing unit would be even smaller. And the second, when buildings are tall and population density is high, basically the workplace and the residence area would be clustered together. It is more likely for the households to live closer to where they work. Therefore, they would commute less distance, therefore reduce carbon emissions directly coming from commuting. And this is actually what we see in the United States. So these figures plot the index that summarize basically how regulatory land use policies are for each cities against the carbon emission cost from building one more household in each cities. So as we can see, basically cities have tighter land use regulations would have lower carbon emissions. Basically, land use regulations, if in general, could help us to alleviate this kind of carbon emissions from urban sprawl. However, land use policy is extremely hard to design. As we discussed, there are many different tools that we can use within this land use policy toolbox. It is really easily for the urban planners to go to the end of excessive, putting too much restrictions on land supplies. And the outcome of that is it would end up creating more congestion and increasing housing cost. When people are moving in, but the land is so scarce, the housing price would boom a lot. And what is worse, if we think about US at a national level, instead of looking at the specific city where people can migrate from one city to another, land use policy could create more problems. So a recent study finds that cities with cleaner power plants and lower energy demand actually tend to have tighter land use regulations. Basically, it is harder to supply land on those cities that are have potential for cleaner urban development. What that implies is that a lot of people would end up in cities that are less developed in terms of cleaner energies instead of move to locations that have potential for cleaner development. And the studies use the urban model to show that if we relax the current land use regulations in California to the level faced by the median urban household in the US, it would actually lead to a 0.6% drop in national household carbon emissions and would decrease the social cost of urban emission of around 310 million annually. And the second set of policies is building public transit. So the idea is if we build more public transit, it would incentivize people to switch from using cars to using public transit, therefore reducing the carbon emission from the commuting. And a lot of research has shown that this policy could be effective. So this is a picture showing the statistics or predictions by American Public Transportation Associations. So the idea is, what this picture shows is that by eliminating one car from a two-car household and encouraging the household to take public transportation instead of driving, a saving of 30% of carbon dioxide emission can be realized. However, again, it is really expensive to build transportations, especially for cities in the US where a lot of like highway system has been already very, very developed. Besides that, public transit has other potential implications. One example is we have to think about who would benefit more from faster transit. So you can imagine if there is a new public transit or a new subway was built, it is likely people would really value those kind of transit and move to the neighborhood that are close to the subways. And usually high-income household would have higher mobility. It is easier for them to move to those to those neighborhoods to take advantage of the new subway. However, low-income household probably would not have the ability to move that frequently. Therefore, they are actually not benefiting from the public transit as their high-income counterparts, although they're probably the people who need the public transit the most. And the third set of policy interventions lies at a very important concept in economics, which is called market failure. So as we mentioned before, so the idea is pretty simple. As we mentioned before, urban sprawl would create social cost, including more carbon emissions. However, when household or individual make decisions, they only consider their private benefits and private costs instead of the social cost. They don't always take into account the social cost of their decision makings. And the consequence is that the city sizes generated purely by the free market, where people make decisions only based on their private benefits and cost, would be much larger than the socially optimal city size. So how do we correct this kind of market failure? An easy fix is just directly force people to take into consideration social cost when they make decisions. How to do that? Imposing carbon tax. So basically, with carbon tax, households need to pay extra cost for each ton of greenhouse gas emission they emit. So they have to bear this kind of social cost that generated from their decisions. There are many pros of carbon tax. First of all, it directly fixes the market failure. It makes consuming like energy or emitting greenhouse gas emissions more costly. Therefore, it would incentivize individuals and companies to reduce their carbon emissions. And the second, the revenue that the government collect from this carbon tax would be potentially helpful in funding environmental programs in the futures, which would generate more benefits potentially. And the third, if private sectors or firms are faced with higher cost because they have to pay for this carbon tax, it would potentially stimulate the firms to invest more in innovations in cleaner energies. However, carbon tax is not that widely used in the world because, first of all, it would increase the cost of living. Households now need to pay an extra cost when they commute or when they consume electricities. And this kind of cost of living may disproportionately affects low-income individuals who has less ability to, for example, switch from their old traditional energy to cleaner energies. And third, to collect those kind of carbon taxes, the first information government need is the precise information of the carbon emission each household emit. However, it is really hard to measure how much the carbon emission is for each household because it can come from so many different sources. The last policy we're going to talk about is greener buildings. So as we mentioned before, the residential and commercial sectors account for almost 40% of the total energy consumption in the US in 2021, which implies that even a small improvement of the sustainability of the existing building stock can create large welfare or energy efficiency in the economy. So good examples in the US is the Energy Star certificates for buildings. And the greener buildings can have a lot of benefits. First of all, it would create incentives for people or developers to reduce energy consumptions. And research has shown that it can increases the property values by a lot. So research has shown that the green buildings, specifically the Energy Star and LEED, which stands for Leadership of Energy and Environmental Design, buildings have much higher rents and asset prices than their conventional counterparts, even in the downturn of the business cycles. They have much higher property values. And it can also enhance the occupants' health and comfort by improving the air quality or using cleaner energies in the buildings. However, building greener buildings are hard because it requires specialized knowledge of technologies, and adapting those kind of technology would incur much higher upfront cost than building a conventional office building. And depending on the availability of this kind of technology, it may not be suitable for all sites, and it might not be financially available to all the developers. So this is what I have for today. So in this seminar, we talk about the causes and consequences of urban sprawl, especially in terms of environment and climate change. And we also talk about the different policy tools that we can use to alleviate or mitigate these kind of consequences. But there are a lot of caveats we should keep in mind in adopting different policies. Thank you. And I'm sure I didn't cover all of the interesting findings in this area. So if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me through this email and this office number. Thanks.
Well, it was great. Yeah, thanks a lot for that presentation. That was really an interesting, I think, overview of urban sprawl and the causes and consequences, especially with respect to climate change. Super interesting and helpful. And also, just to note for folks that this webinar, which I think is actually could be really informative for a really broad audience out there, will be available on our website afterwards. It'll be recorded, and so folks can come and have a look at it. Because I think there's just a lot of gems in there. So Kathy Jackson asked a really interesting question, and that question is here in the Q&A. Is there any data on the appropriate balance of green spaces within high density city development? Have you seen any studies on that, providing insights on that?
Yes, so green-based and high density. Yes, so yes, they are. So basically the idea is, if I understand the question correctly, is that people value open spaces or green spaces, and there's this like trade-off of like more efficient high density development and keeping those open spaces as amenities. Is that the questions?
I think that's right on. Yeah.
Yeah. So there are research showing that like people really value open spaces. Like there is a value of keeping those areas. But on the top of my head, I cannot think of like a specific paper that directly look at the trade-off of like high density development and green space. Yeah, but definitely there are research showing the value of open space.
Yeah, I just went ahead and tried something here. We don't normally do that, but I'm going to go ahead and Kathy, if you want to unmute yourself and follow up on that, feel free to do that. Just jump in.
Thank you. You've addressed part of it. I know it's not exactly where she was going with this. I think the other question piece of green space is what we know about green infrastructure and its effect on carbon emissions or carbon capture in our settings. So that balance as well.
I see. Okay, so basically green space itself can be useful tools for like reducing carbon emissions. Yes, definitely they are. I guess the research on top of my head is not directly related to the context in the US, but there are large literature looking at, for example, deforestations in other countries, for example, that in terms of like forests can serve as a container or like a balanced tool in terms of reducing carbon emissions. There are a lot of research showing that the like value of those kind of like policy try to sustain the green spaces or forest. Yes, they are. But it would be really interesting to look at this like trade-off in terms, if we consider like reducing carbon emissions, if we need to like keep more green spaces for that purposes in the context of US.
Yeah, great. I think that's really a super interesting sort of conversation to have, and there's probably a lot more research that needs to be done on that one. I do want to also mention to other folks on that, we can try it here. I can try to sort of unmute you if you want to ask a question, maybe just in person, put it in chat. I'd like to ask a question. I don't know if there's a way you can raise your hand. I don't know if you can do that as a participant, but if you want to ask a question live, then feel free to sort of just signal me somehow, and I should be able to control that. So just let me know. I wanted to follow up with a question that sort of perplexed me in the last few years is what's been the effect of the pandemic on sprawl? Do we know much about that? Has it increased it, especially in the US really, but has it increased sprawl, reduced sprawl? Any research that's out there telling us what's kind of happened in the last few years?
Yeah. So that's a really great point. So there are interesting ongoing research on that among especially urban economists. So a paper on top of my head is there is the people who track people's like location choices before and after like pandemics. So after pandemic, like people realize there's the possibility to do remote work and work from home. So basically they don't need to consider the daily commute from where they live and where they work. So the consequence of that is first, people are moving away from the downtown again, which is contributing to urban sprawl, right? And the second, people are also moving away from more densely populated cities, which also means like housing price is higher, to cheaper, less densely populated areas. So these are the two major like pattern change of people's like location choices. However, when we talk about urban sprawl, we always talk about building of new housing, and developers are also involved. So I still think it is probably too short term right now for any of like effects to show in terms of like new development. So we'll see. It's interesting to see like how new build up would be like in the future.
Yeah, I was amazed that I was listening to the podcast on gosh, I guess it was on The Economist yesterday, and it was just stunning to hear this numbers of people who are moving into Texas, right? And a lot of them are moving out of California and into Texas. And what's interesting is California was kind of the poster child for urban sprawl for about a century in the US, right? From the early 1900s right through the early 2000s. But now it looks like Texas is, in the sense that something like 500,000 people a year are moving to Texas, which has to be creating enormous urban sprawl, I would imagine. So is there some sense in which because people are kind of moving themselves, that we're sort of maybe losing urban sprawl in some places, that is it's happening less often now in say California, but happening more often now in Texas and other places where people are moving to?
Yeah. So that's a really great question, and it's super interesting to see this pattern. However, first of all, I think it depends. Like as we discussed, like urban sprawl is the consequences of many different factors, right? It really depends on the geographic characteristics of a city, and also the original land use policies of that place, right? So my question so my answer to your question is like it really depends like on which city we are looking at. And the second thing I want to mention is this like relocation is gonna reduce sprawl in California, for example? So I'm guessing probably not, because housing is like really you cannot remove housing immediately, right? So what is built, and it would be like really hard to imagine cities in California shrink so rapidly right after a pandemic. It could be in the future, in the long term, but probably it would not happen so fast because housing is durable. It's hard to change in such a short time.
Yeah, that's a super good point. Switching sort of topics here a little bit. Ian has asked in the chat, I think a really good question about, how can a city like Columbus address its lack of public transportation system? He said decent public transportation. I'm just gonna get rid of the decent and say just any public transportation.
Yeah. So that's a really important but really hard questions. So
Well, Ian's known for putting people on the spot, so.
But it would be great to think about it. So first of all, I think Columbus already have a really pretty well connected highway or road system. So my experience is that it is super easy to commute from one place to another in Columbus. So with this like pretty established highway system right now, first of all, it's gonna be to think about what's the incentives to invest more in public transit. Keeping in mind we already have a pretty good transport system, so it would be hard, I guess, to incentivize to invest too much on a public transportation system. And the second, because like I don't know, like I still don't know like what are the, first of all, it's hard to imagine what is the optimal public transportation system in Columbus. I guess it really depends on like what kind of goals policymakers want to achieve. For example, if the policymakers want to reduce carbon emission, for example, maybe it would be helpful to build more transportation promoting investing more on bus and incentivize people to take bus instead of using cars. Or you could change, second, you could change people's behavior by putting congestion tolls in highways, so that people would be less likely to use highway or roads that often. Instead, they will use the public transportation system. Yeah, so it really depends on what kind of goals.
Well, a few places have experimented with that, right? With actually putting tolls or having more roads be toll space, especially like in downtown and urban areas, right?
Yeah. Like in California, there are many cities are right now have like express tolls, right? Yeah, so this is an interesting point because the effectiveness or the question of like, should we impose congestion tolls really need careful analysis. Like we need to consider the costs and benefits of both sides. So it's understandable that California is adapting this kind of tolls because the congestion there is quite salient right now, and it's really a problem. So I still have fresh memory that I have to get up 5 p.m. To travel from San Jose to LA to avoid the congestions. So it probably would be effective to impose congestion tolls in cities or locations that are heavily congested, but probably that's not the case for Columbus. If we don't see that much congestion happen in most part of the city or most of the time, it probably would not be necessary to impose that kind of congestion tolls.
Yeah, and I suppose that one of the things that's maybe a rising conundrum is the issue of sort of electric cars, right? Is that electric cars have the potential, depending on the electric grid, to really reduce the carbon emission, but they don't get rid of the sprawl and they don't get rid of the congestion, right? So we're still left with two of the big problems associated with this issue, right? Even if we can
Yeah.
get rid of them.
Yeah, that's a really great point. So I think this is why like urban planning and urban economics is so interesting, because everything is changing if you change one part of it. And if you want to design an optimal policy within a city, you have to consider so many different aspects, right? So as I mentioned, like urban planning is like super challenging. Like it's hard to predict people's behavior and what are the general equilibrium outcomes of different policies.
Ian.
Yeah, just going back to public transportation in Columbus. I guess Columbus, in some sense, it's quite a large city now, and it's growing very fast, even in the time that I've lived here. But it never inherited any kind of public transportation system other than the Coda bus system. So I guess it's always going to be difficult to invest in or put in place, say, a tram system. I think it had a tram system historically, which it got rid of. So, but going back to roads, why don't we have a rideshare system on the freeways in Columbus? I mean, that surely would be a fairly straightforward thing to implement. Or you have expressways on the outer belt certain hours of the day. I drove through Jacksonville in Florida the other day, which doesn't seem that much a bigger city than Columbus, and they have incredible systems there. So this is getting off topic.
Yeah.
But coming from a country where we use public transport, or I did when I was living there, I've always been disappointed in how poor the system is here in Columbus. And I think the bus system has got worse, actually, since over the last 25. I used to catch the bus all the time. Anyway, that's just my personal beef about the city.
Yeah. So I agree. Like the discussion about like optimal transportation policy is super hard, actually. So like one thing I want to mention related to your point is like like about the expressways for example public transit like bus. A lot of like developing countries actually right now are trying to adopt this kind of policies. For example, building expressways in Bogota, in Jakarta, many places in the world. It was pretty effective. It is pretty effective in Bogota, but actually it's not that effective in Jakarta. The reason behind it is so many cities, when they are trying to like leave out this expressway, it actually take up an lane that are supposed to use for other vehicles. So if this bus schedule is not like perfectly like designed or like like say effectively designed, it would actually increase congestions and create more problems. So transportation is really hard to design because it's like it has so many different tools that we can use, and it would have like different impacts. So there are many research looking at different like policies in many cities, including in the US. So I think there are more to do, definitely. And I'm hoping there's a paper there in the Columbus context. What are the potential optimal transportation policies in Columbus?
That sounds like a good project to work on, Yao.
Yeah.
Useful. I guess I want to ask a slightly different question. And it's a question I get a lot of times. It's the question of this carbon intensity in cities, and how does it account for I mean, what you presented was basically transportation, but you could also add in electricity and things like that, and that's sort of the tons of carbon per person or something like that. But that doesn't account for all of the things that those people purchase, right? So a city like New York City, which ended up really low on the sort of carbon intensity and really high on the number of people, it also has a really high income. So just as an example, I think people in the city of New York probably consume far more beef per person than even people maybe in Ohio, right? And beef, it turns out, is one of the most carbon intensive goods in the world. So, these stats don't really account for all these things that people in those cities consume, right? So how do we, I mean, I don't know if that's a real issue, but do we need to address that? Do we need to think about that? How do we think about that if we do?
This is an excellent point. This is definitely true. Like what I am presenting today is definitely not a universe capture of all the carbon emission sources. Like food is one like really, really large part, and we haven't like even like consider. I think there's potential a really great research project on the way. Like you can imagine if people move from one place to another, like the lifestyle would change and the consumption of food, the structure would change, and it will essentially affect the carbon emission per capita, right? I have not seen any papers that are combining this like spatial structure of cities and food consumptions in terms of looking at carbon emissions. But I think that's a really interesting idea to explore.
Yeah, it certainly is a complicated issue. I want to ask one thing. Could you stop your share? I wanted to just throw up one thing. I just want to make people aware of the next webinar in our webinar series before we go here. And just since we're sort of here at the end of our time with Yao, just pointing out that this is a continuing series. This was a fantastic webinar by Yao. And we have a few more webinars. The next one is by Wang who in our department as well, who's going to talk about the certified bee campus, the costs and benefits, and basically, this is this issue of pollinator habitat, right? And trying to develop methodologies and approaches to improve pollinator habitat even in urban areas. So it's related really, Yao, to some of your work and some of your discussion here is how do we, and maybe to the question Kathy asked, how do we create those spaces in these urban areas that allow, bees, which are really important ecosystem, species in our ecosystems. How do we create a sort of environment that allows them to thrive, not just in suburban, urban, or in sort of rural areas, but also in suburban and urban areas. So invite people to attend that one. But at this point, I want to thank Yao for your excellent presentation. Really appreciate it. Too bad people can't clap like I can, but thanks a lot, Yao.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, and invite
you.
folks who are still here to join us for the next webinars, and we'll certainly keep you posted on the ones following Dr. Who's. So thanks, Yao.
Thank you.
Okay, that was great. Yeah, I really appreciate that. It's awesome.